Today's show is brought to you by Kegconnection.com. Purchase all of your homebrewing supplies and draft beer equipment with everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping at Kegconnection.com. Like the brand new True to Style recipe kit, a delicious German Weiss beer. It, along with every other True to Style recipe, is on sale right now at Kegconnection.com. Go to Kegconnection.com and use the promo code HHH to receive 5% off your order. That's promo code HHH at Kegconnection.com.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at homebrewsupply.com, Mr. Ladik Joe Ermis, once again. And then don't call it a comeback, the President and Chief Keg Washer at Kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me for today's show.
Yes, sir. How's it going?
Yeah, it's good to be here, except my do not disturb. I didn't click the button right, but I got it now.
Yeah, you didn't click the button right. I like that. You're not in your... Lately, when you were on the show, the last few episodes, we'd set up the studio where Joe is right now in the beautiful headquarters studios. We don't have a name for it yet.
Still not working. But
Baracho Studios, we'll figure out some name for it. But Joe's in it now, so you don't have all my nice detailed instructions for you that hold your hand and tell you, step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. And setting your phone to do not disturb is part of those instructions. So you could blame me.
Well, it is on do not disturb, but it still rings. I don't understand that.
Huh. I guess I've never read those instructions.
Yeah.
No, it literally is on do not disturb, but it's still ringing.
Oh, your cell phone. Oh,
yeah,
I can't help you there. You got one of those import from Nokia. Right. It's a nice phone.
Well, I turned the volume all the way down now. Maybe that will work.
That's what I did.
Maybe. I was going to say, I put mine on just do not disturb, and that for me works. But I have one of them made in America. Actually, I don't know if the Google Pixel is made in America.
Of course it's not made in America. We don't make any phones in America anymore.
Oh, okay.
Designed.
I thought it was
designed in America.
I thought it was our preteens that were digging the minerals to make these phones. You're telling me they're not American children?
No,
Now I feel bad. We have got a great show lined up. One of the first things we're going to go into when we get into the meat of the show is on Monday night, we had a blast over at the compound, or as Todd calls it, his barn. We had a taste testing night that myself, Joe, and Todd, and the bookkeeper, Josh Brown, who longtime listeners may remember, he was on like episode 5 of the show.
Nobody remembers that.
No, and honestly, they're from episode 1 to like 30. I've considered wiping because they're bad. They're really bad. We were nervous a lot. We didn't do video, so y'all couldn't tell how much I was shaking and twitching. Our topics we were more limited in that you didn't mind talking brewing, but you were like, oh, let's get another equipment question, because that's kind of where you're passionate at, Todd. And I wasn't brewing at all unless you were brewing, which is to say
that's where I was passionate at. Now I really enjoy we always brewed, but now we're brewing with gusto.
Exactly. When people grow, people grow. I think I've
grown quite a bit since that first episode, I think.
and I've gone in and out. I'm like, my wife said it to me recently. What is that guy's name who was in The Machinist? Christian Bale. She was like, you're like Christian Bale, but not as good looking and don't make near as much money. I was like, you're right though. Like the roller coaster of weight. Like he'll gain a bunch of weight for a role and he'll lose a bunch of weight. I don't have a role. It's just a season. Like the summer season right now, I'm trying to lose some weight because I'm going to be in a bathing suit soon. But after like August hits and I'm like, I'm probably done in bathing suits, I bulk. beer, cereal.
Well, you gotta have some reserve for it during the winter anyway. So that's important.
I know
During the cold months, yeah.
I've learned from you, Todd. I've learned from you. Before, like I said, before we get into that meat potatoes, I do want to welcome you back, Todd. We have had, I don't know, you don't really listen to the show regularly. I don't hold that against you. You're a busy man already, but I've mentioned it on every episode before today. Outpouring of people. Literally pushing 1,000 people who have individually written in, wanting to give you their warm thoughts and prayers.
I've received some emails and texts personally, but I didn't realize there were 1,000 people that had reached out.
It's literally not joke pushing that. I can most of it's by email, Facebook message through the facebook.com/homebrew happy hour.
Oh, I would love to see those.
A lot of people have really been reaching out, and
very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, you are. I always thought I was the most beloved on the show, but you definitely seems like people like you more. But we can move on from that. I was just up there at headquarters, and like I said, we're going to talk about the tasting that we did. The equipment you guys are adding to the brew room, I wanted to bring up. That new spike, Joe, what is that, the CF15 that's in the brew room?
Yes, yeah, the CF15. So it's, I think, a total of 18 gallons, and it's kind of designed for 10 to 15 gallon batches.
And it's not like, here, you could clear this up for me, and I hope a lot of people that are listening that are newer might be like me, or maybe I'm just the dummy. It is not just a fermenter. I mean, it is like, James was calling it the new bright tank. And I know what a bright tank is in regards to like the little definition, but like this spike CF15 seems like it can do everything on it. Like you can it's a fermenter, obviously. You can carbonate in it. You can bring it up to pressure, and it can be a serving tank too, right?
Right. So yeah, they call them uni tanks. So yeah, you can ferment in it. You can do pressurized fermentation. So it's basically has a rating of 15 psi, I think is the max pressure. So plenty to get a nice. You could do a pressurized fermentation. And then of course, you can carbonate in there as well. So you can either serve out of there or keg it closed, a closed transfer into a keg, and it'll already be, ready to drink. So
it's special unit. Amazing. I mean, there's a Kolsch in there right now, and we had a beer ready in it like 2.5 weeks after we got it. It's amazing how quickly we tried the beer. We had a visitor from China today, and we got a sample out for him, and James and I are like little kids. We're like, look, we're just pouring it out of here, and it's already carbonated. So it's pretty damn cool. The great thing too is when you do transfer it over to a keg, you're never exposing it to any oxygen at all. So you don't get any oxygenization if you purge that keg first by, we always take a liquid disconnect, hook it up to the gas, run it for a while so it's shooting CO2 gas from the bottom, purging that keg, and then we fill the keg, so you're never exposed to any oxygen.
It also looks really nice. Like that's the thing that sticks out to me. I'm a sucker for aesthetics, and I think it has the jacket on it already, the insulation jacket.
It doesn't look quite as nice as the insulation that James put on the other fermenter with the cans of foam.
I had a naming contest. I had a naming contest a while ago, and I think the winner was like Scrotum McGee, or
the Scro fermenter.
Yeah, the Scro tank. I forget what it was, but it was definitely I also like to bring up Spike. Our buddies over there, Ben, the founder at Spike, good people. They also just launched that new Flex 5-gallon. I call it a fermenting bucket. That does not do it justice. Joe, you can elaborate on it. It's a piece of work, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's nice. It's got the tri-clamp connections, and it does have a conical shape at the bottom, even though I guess it's not a true conical because you can't dump your yeast from the bottom, but it does have that shape, which is nice. It'll kind of collect it in a nice little cone there for you. I haven't gotten my hands on it yet, obviously, but it'd be sweet to it's going to be sweet to check out. I'm sure they'll have some HomebrewCon this year.
Yeah, it's kind of the mini me of the one we have in the in the brewing room now. I think we should get one, so when we're doing smaller batches, we could test.
They're nice. Yeah, it would be sweet to try it out. Yeah.
For the sake of research and development, I support that idea.
When James ordered that fermenter, he actually ordered 2, and one of them is going in my house. So
what? Yeah. I honestly didn't know that.
Yeah, because we have 2 brew research centers within the company, and one's going to be in my barn. So
that's right. The Kegconnection barn. It is it's a research center. I like that. That's what we'll call from now. Research center. Speaking of HomebrewCon, I'm wearing the camera gets cropped out. I have to stand up a little bit. I'm wearing my Homebrewers Association throwback shirt that I got from last year's HomebrewCon, and I mention it because registration has opened up and it's official. Homebrew Supply, Brewer's Friend, and CM Becker are going to have an island, a freaking island that we're going to be showing all the cool new equipment from CM Becker, the nice partnership between Homebrew Supply and Brewer's Friend, how those sites are working together. And we'll have
wait a minute. I wasn't invited this year. Kegconnection didn't get invited?
You are always invited. We can talk details after I stop hitting.
Okay.
I am looking so forward to it. We don't have a booth number yet. People, we made an announcement on Instagram, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago, just showing how it was official. And I've gotten a couple messages going, "Oh, what's your booth number? I'd love to come check you out." What I love. All right, so the Brewers Association is the big picture item, and within it is the BA, the Brewers Association, and then the American Homebrewers Association. The Brewers Association, they are very good people, but they're maybe a little bit like formal or structured. I don't know if I'm trying to not be rude, and be complimentary because I sincerely enjoy them. But like what I like about the AHA people, like with the BA, this is the date. You sign up for Craft Brewers Conference at this date, and if you don't sign up by this date, tough. Maybe you'll get a booth next year. Very competitive. They're very on the ball. Where the AHA, and I appreciate this as the man who does all the booking for our conferences. The date was yesterday? Okay. I'll call up our friend Carrie there. She's the head of it. Hey, Carrie. Hey, Josh. Yeah, I messed the date again. Oh, don't worry. We got you covered.
Well, they're homebrewers. They're laid back, right?
Very. Yeah. They take that relaxed part that Charlie says very serious over at the AHA, and I appreciate it. They are some of my favorite people in the world. And HomebrewCon, I don't want to speak for you guys, but I think it's our collectively favorite event to go to every year, because of the people running the show and the people who attend the show. This year will be the biggest year in terms of audience for us. Believe it or not, our audience has grown more than twice its size. And last year I was like, how do we have this many people listening to the show already? And we met some really cool people. And now our audience is getting to a point where we have people like, oh, we should do a meetup and this and that. So I'm trying to make the logistics work out to where maybe we can do a meetup after one of the nights at a local bar.
That'd be great.
People are bringing us beer. We're gonna have giveaways. Last year we had shirts. I believe Todd and I haven't really discussed the details, but I think that's what we'll do, where you can reserve a shirt through our site like last year to make sure you get one, a Homebrew Happy Hour shirt, and then it'll have Homebrew Happy Hour on it, and it'll be a good way for you to show that, hey, I do listen to it. And that way Todd, if he sees you walking around in it, he'll go, oh, people do listen to this, because we should
put a date on it this year, like have
the year annual
HomebrewCon 2019. That'd be fun.
Deal. I'm down for that. I think.
Well, I feel like before too long, Homebrew Happy Hour is going to have its own booth, right?
Yeah, I wanted to, but having me just sit there and small talk about things that don't matter, and then I start, if you get enough in me, I start going down like conspiracy theory rabbit trails, and Todd doesn't want to pay for that booth, or I'm not quite Alex Jones. I don't think the beer is making the frogs gay or whatever. I forget what he said on the internet, but I will go down those rabbit trails most of the time for fun, but I can pretend pretty well. So yes, HomebrewCon at the end of June. Please, if you're coming to Rhode Island, I think this is going to be the funnest year yet. Not just because of the like our position in regards to the podcast, but because I've never been to Providence. That is like, they're calling it Brew England for this year's theme. Joe, I think it's going to be right up your alley. I'm happy you're going with us. And I know you were talking about trying to split off to seeing if you can make a trip down to Vermont. That would be cool. But there's a lot. I've not been in the New England area, and I don't even think I've been there ever. What's the closest I've been up there? When I was very little, my dad used to take us on road trips. So either way, as adult version Joshua, I'm very excited to be up there. So
it's a fun place. New England's wonderful. I actually spent a lot of time there, but it's been a long time since I've been to Providence. So I'm really looking forward to getting back in that area.
I am too, very much so. And then
I had an ex-wife that her family lived right around there. So I spent a lot of time in Cape Cod. I know I don't seem like a Cape Cod kind of guy for most people, but yeah, I'm a Cape Codder.
That shirt you're wearing screams Cape Cod. I love it. Audio listeners, you just have to picture his like Tommy Bahama knockoff.
I'm pretty sure I looked like a fish out of water 20 years ago when I went there a lot, 20 something years ago when I went there a lot with my cowboy boots on. And yeah.
And actually, hey, real quick, is that the shirt that you got at Portland last year when we went to, not REI. What was the store? Columbia.
Yeah, I bought about 2 or 3 shirts. I don't remember if this was one of them or not.
Okay.
I wore one of them yesterday, the one with the blue and red sharks. That one was definitely from that trip. So
yeah, I remember that. That actually ended up being one of my favorite nights ever with you. We went to McMiniman's. And it just had a blast. Met that couple. We've already gone over that. That's beating a dead horse. Real quick, one last thing before we get into the actual show, because this will bleed right into it. There is, like I mentioned at the very top bumper, a new True to Style from Kegconnection's True to Styles, and it's a German Weiss beer just launched. I mean, like as we are recording this, is the first day that it's available for purchase. We have a whole lot of deals on the True to Style at Kegconnection. Going to be on Homebrew Supply as well, I believe. Todd, you had us come over Monday. Well, I was coming over anyway because I stay there. But Joe came over and we were doing this beer tasting. Explain, like, what was your thought? Go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm looking on my phone as I talk here because I actually had my wife go take a photograph in the kegerator. One of the first things we wanted to do was we brewed this German Weiss beer. We brewed that in a 15-gallon batch, and then we split it into 3 fermenters and used 3 different yeasts in it. Now, we picked 3 yeasts, and then I know James accidentally put the wrong yeast in one of them, and it was a lager. Do you remember which one he put in there, Joe? It doesn't matter, but
I don't.
Yeah, anyway, he put the wrong yeast in, and he said, oh, crap, I put the wrong yeast in. Then he put another yeast in that was the correct yeast, and that one turned out exceptionally well. Like, we didn't even get to taste it during the taste testing because it was all gone. Everybody that came to my house, that's what they wanted to drink. But the 2 that we taste tested, the one that we liked, because we couldn't remember, it was the Y Yeast Bavarian wheat strain. Is the one that turned out to be the most, what I would call true to style. Although jokingly, Joe and I think Joe, you and Joshua actually, and myself, we probably like the taste of the other one a little better because we're not always big Hefeweizen type fans with a banana and clove. And I think that's what's really unique, although, about this recipe is we're not calling it a Hefeweizen because we're trying to do a German Weiss beer, which can be called a Hefeweizen or cannot be called a Hefeweizen, depending on how much of those flavors that come out. And in particular, I guess the amount of yeast that's still kind of floating around in there and making it cloudy. We've had a long argument about this, Joe, and I have to admit,
you have
somewhat right in your answer. So one of the things I saw a lot online when we were researching, we did more research on this beer probably than any beer we've ever brewed, right?
I think so. I would have to agree. Yeah.
And one of the things that we read online was the Hefeweizen is often because they're bottle conditioning it with the yeast. But when I did even more and more research on it, it's really just that the yeast gets left in there, even if it's on tap, if they conditioned it and didn't do any filtering or let it settle very much. So, but by the same token, there's no rhyme or reason to it. Like, there is no right answer because when the Germans make this beer, they will call it a Hefeweizen. They will call it a German Weissbier. They will call it several other things, but they're all really pretty much the same beer.
Mm-hmm.
It's just whatever they feel like calling. I think Hefeweizen is kind of a term that's gotten more and more popular, maybe because of the United States, because so many people call it a Hefeweizen.
Mm-hmm.
In the US.
I'd have to agree, yeah. And then even just within the style Hefeweizen, there's just tons of different yeast blends and different strains that you can find. So there's a lot you can kind of categorize into that same Hefeweizen, Weissbier, Weizen, so.
Well, in the German Weissbier, you've also got the Crystal Weiss, the crystal, which means clear. So there's a really, really clear German Weissbier as well, but for this true to style, we kind of tended to go towards the cloudier, not the crystal, but the
I guess more traditional. I guess it was probably they were probably unfiltering it before they started filtering it, I think.
But the beer, I mean, it turned out really, really good. And what we were trying to go for as well, we didn't want to have overpowering clove and banana flavors. We wanted them to be there because that's very traditional. But it seems like everything we do in the United States is, if a little is good, let's do a whole lot, right? And so we tried to balance it out and create one that wasn't overpowering. And again, Joe, as you know, it's some of that is controlled also by temperature. So you have to not only control what yeast you're using, but you also have to be careful at what temperatures you use when you're doing the actual fermentation.
Sure. Yeah, that's from people, pro brewers I've kind of brewed alongside with and stuff. That's one of their main things is, not only the strain is going to affect, your flavors, but if you ferment at low temperatures, you're going to get more of a certain flavors. And a lot of them will say to ferment, at like 63, 62 degrees and then raise it up after a week or what, so there's a bunch of different strategies to getting certain flavors more pronounced than others.
Right.
Yeah, I just want to go back to when you were talking about the one that James accidentally pitched. I heard that one ended up brilliant. Like I heard that beer that was one of y'all's favorite ones. That was a total accident.
Yeah, it was really, really good, but it probably didn't have quite enough even of the banana and clove flavors for it to be as true to style. That's the reason I'm saying I think that because the second one we tried, I didn't bring up very much. It had very little of that, almost none of that. And what was weird about it is that we really liked the taste of it. We enjoyed drinking it, but it kind of smelled like old tennis shoes.
Like
it had a foot smell. It definitely had the foot smell.
Yeah.
I think we should stress too, though, like what's cool, in my opinion, about the true to style recipes is that it is a throwback effort to what it might have been like or probably was like based off the traditions of the region we grab it from, right? Like this Weiss beer in the Bavaria region is where James got the inspiration, got all his info, did all his homework from. And it is interesting, like you said, how, I mean, we're talking a lot of time passing from the early days of a Weiss beer to what we have in America or what we've done. It's really cool. The BJCP, BJCP. Yes, BJCP. I always get the letters around. I'm dyslexic, maybe. They have this like spectrum for any given style of like the IBU can be between this and this. The color can be between this and this SRM. The yeast is typically this or whatever strain, blah, blah, blah. In that spectrum, you can get a lot of very different results. And that's what's interesting to me when we were doing the taste testing, specifically on the ESB. Todd, how many ESBs did we pop open? 3 or 4? Do you remember?
I think it was 4. Yeah.
Would you, both of y'all, this is proposed to both of you. Was there any that if you had your eyes closed or even, if they were a blind taste test that you would have been able to pin as both being similar enough to like, oh yeah, that tastes just like that one did. Like I thought the ESB was the most diverse throughout that night of all we tasted. And I say that because none of them were, oh, this is an ESB with something else added to it. Kind of like some of the alt beers we were trying, which I'll get to later. These were all just like, yeah, these are ESB beers. And I don't think any of them, you could tell like, oh, that's probably an ESB. But one of them was like, oh, that's an ESB. That tastes like it tasted like it had some brandy in it or something. I mean, it was.
Well, that was the Community, was the one that tasted like that, right?
No.
I think it was the Fullers.
It was the
No,
Fullers.
was it the Fuller? Because the thing that caught me about oh, you're right, because it was kind of really light. It didn't have much body, but it had that whiskey flavor.
It had like a booziness to it. I think that's where,
you know, Fuller's is obviously British brewed beer, very traditional ESB, you would think. But if you had put a blindfold on me and had me taste it, I wouldn't have thought it was an ESB. Like, it's probably the quintessential ESB, but to me, it didn't taste like an ESB because, again, we've tried so many different styles and it's been changed as it crossed the pond, as they say. So to me, I don't know if it was just me, but it didn't seem as much like an ESB as some other ESBs I've had.
And that's what I was getting at, is being funny. Because now the one that we had that was homebrewed, that I believe you and James brewed together, or no, the latest one was one James did, right? The one where it's a younger beer right now, so it's not very clear. We had our fun at James at Spence. Ha ha ha. I posted a photo. Joe, did I show? I did. I showed you both, right? I posted and a girl said, that's a unique color for an ASB. I was like, aha, James, gotcha. But
what we're gonna do on that, just so you know, I was thinking about it. I'm gonna leave it in that kegerator for another month and not pour any more of it. And then we'll try it again because I think it just needs to settle at a colder temperature a little bit longer.
I think so too. But the batch that we brewed last together, which on the Cooler Brew video, that was an ESB. And then the batch you brewed before, both of those were like within a hairline of being similar to each other. Like, I knew when I poured your second one, I was like, yeah, that tastes just like the last ESB that James had brewed. And
both those were the same one. They were just two different kegs.
Well, that's what I mean. It was the same brew day? It was just two different kegs? No, I'm talking about the first ESB James ever brewed for us. I'm talking months ago. I mean, even a year ago. Trust me, I know, because every time a keg of that ends up at your house, that's all I end up drinking that night.
Believe me, I know. I mean, you just stick your head on a chair upside down and open the tap when there's an ESB on tap.
I like a good ESB, and the community ESB is what has always reminded me, or vice versa. I forget which came first. Which one's the chicken, which one's the egg? But they remind me of each other. The ESB recipe that we have reminds me a lot of that community. And that community reminds me of the one that James and I had when we were at the Brits pub in DC for Craft Brewers Conference, the one right by our hotel. You remember that pub? They had the lawn bowling.
Yeah, sure.
And all that.
Yeah.
The ESB that we had it two different ways there. We had one served at a traditional cask beer engine, being poured from the beer engine, so much warmer, really creamy mouthfeel. Is awesome. And then we had one poured, just from a kegerator or a chilled tap, whatever. All of those have always been like, oh yeah, that's what an ESB is, because it's all within, like I said, a little hairline difference of each other. When we opened up some of those ESBs, and even the newest ESB that got brewed, I was like, man, tonight's the most left to right of the spectrum of ESB I've ever been on. And then we moved on to the alt, where that was just, granted, the alts that we were having all had some kind of purposed variation to them, which ended up then being my favorite part of the night, because we got to drink another one of our buddy Brandon, who listens to the show.
Excellent.
We had two of his alts. We had the standard alt, where he actually makes his water profile off of Dusseldorf, Germany, the home of alt beer. He makes his water profile based off of them. Way more into it than I could ever be. I'm just like, whatever my city of Kyle Tetz's tap water is, that's alt beer, buddy. That's alt beer water. And then he made one with, oh gosh, Joe, what did he put in it?
It was French, medium toast French oak chips, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Like, it had some like hints of vanilla, delicious. We finally opened up that mushroom alt, that Old Town Brewery up in the Pacific Northwest. Our buddies Andrew and Miranda sent to us, and that might have been my favorite beer that night. I don't know if I could. It's like a breakfast stout for me, where I don't think I could drink it all night, but it's going to be my favorite in that night. That one was good.
It was really
good. The thing that cracked me up is that we all tasted it, and we were writing down notes, and we said it tastes like it has a taste of maple pancake syrup is one of the notes that we tasted in there. And then we realized later, being that I'm old, that like in 4 font on the label, it actually had a description. So I get my glasses and magnifying glass out, and it's like has hints of maple syrup in it. I mean, we just you could it was obvious to everybody that tried it, you know. So that it's kind of neat when you taste those nuances and everybody tastes them, you know.
You're not completely off. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly when I decided before we do these tastings, I'm going to always read the bottle, because I realized if I would have read the bottle, I would have sounded smart. I could have said things that you would have thought I was just tasting. Because we had another guy, the bookkeeper, like I was saying, Josh Brown was there, and he was saying things, and the poor guy, he fell into what I think a lot of new beer enthusiasts fall into, that kind of, I'm going to be quiet and not say anything because I don't want to look dumb. And Joe, I appreciated you telling him there's no wrong answers. What are you tasting? What are you tasting? And he was like, I don't know. I taste X, Y, and Z. And he was like, is that wrong? And you were like, no, that's not wrong. If that's what you're getting, then that's what you're getting. Like, do you get that a lot, Joe, with people calling you about either making the recipes or whatever, that kind of new brewer worried about sounding silly?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say with flavor profiles as much. What I really got that from was when I went to Ohio for that wine tasting. The guy who walked us through the actual tasting that we did was phenomenal, and he kind of expressed that, you know, it's like, you know, there isn't really no wrong answer. It's like you're gonna taste what your palate perceives, and you may kind of associate those flavors with something different than other people, but that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. So,
yeah.
So you were going, I taste hints of cranberries, and in the back of his mind, he's going, idiot.
Yeah. There's no cranberry there.
Yeah. And if Todd was your instructor, he wouldn't just say it in the back of his mind. It would be vocalized. I guess where I was going with that is just to wrap up this first segment, and because I do have a question to bring to the show, and man, I small talked us to death. My apologies. But where I was wanting to wrap it up is, I think people, homebrewers specifically, it's a lot of fun. Once you do a batch of whatever style you do, have your friends over, get some commercial versions of that beer, and taste and compare what you like about each one. And I think that is going to help your future brew days, and especially recipe building, because you're going to, like, we do these true to styles, and I genuinely like these true to styles, but there may be something that you brew, like, let's say you get this new Weiss beer, you're like, it's good, but man, I would like a little bit more, you know, clove forwardness. You can do that with the yeast, right? You could do a different yeast, and then when you brew it, if you like everything else about it, you can do what you do to make it yours and make it the way that you want it. And that's my favorite part about brewing, is that, man, I really like Left Hand's, you know, nitro melt stout, and I don't have nitro, but what kind of malt can I maybe do to get that similar mouth feel, or what can I, you know, there, like, James has introduced me to this whole thing of just I get overwhelmed and panic attacks when I think about, like, oh, the possibilities that I can do now that my dad and I are all grain brewing. But I just want to encourage people, whether you're a brewer, or we actually have a lot of people who just listen. I don't know why, but they just listen for the entertainment value, but they enjoy craft beer. It's really cool to get a bunch of beer, whether you brewed it yourself and then also commercial beer, and just taste and compare. I think it's a fun night you can have with your friends, and we had maybe a little too much fun, but I enjoyed it.
on that note, if you're closing up that segment, I just want to mention, I think my favorite from that night was the stout. That we pretty much, I think that was
really good.
Ones. Yeah, but that
what was that?
Mother Earth, I think, is the brewery, right,
Yeah,
Josh, from San Diego, and it was Angel's Tears, maybe. It was something have to do with.
Thank you, Joe. I was going to go this whole show without thanking our friend Frank from San Diego. He came to Austin. He offered to buy me my beer when we met up at Hops and Grain. I didn't let him. Todd, believe it or not, I didn't let him. I didn't do the slow draw that you're used to. I had the River beer, fantastic lager. But he brought us Epic Brewing, a bunch of beer that we didn't even get to because we had so much already. I gave James their River Alt. I'm looking forward to hearing what James has to say about that. And then from Mother Earth, he brought a Mother's Guava Sour. Joe enjoyed it.
I tried it.
And then I don't remember the name of the stout, but I had 2 Christoph cigars, for one for me and one for Todd, because no one else there really smoked cigars. And that stout was the best companion beer I've had in a long time with the cigar. That Old Town Alt, I was like, oh, this would go great with the cigar. And it did. But that stout went perfect with the cigar. Oh man, I could do that night over and over again. That was a blast. But yes, thank you, Joe.
Let me just mention one more thing on the True to Style. I think it's important. You mentioned earlier they were going to be on sale because we're launching the new True to Style. We also went through every recipe, and we've been able to decrease what the cost is on all the recipes because we've gotten some better pricing on some of the ingredients. We're not doing the metal signs with them anymore. It is an option on some of them where we still have them. But we were able to actually decrease the retail price on all those, plus they're going on sale. So in some cases, they're considerably less than they were because we really want people to try them, and we want them to be accessible. So we've substantially lowered the price on those, and I think that that'll allow more people to go out there and try them. The other thing I was going to say is that they do evolve with just what you're talking about, Josh, when you say that people want a different, or that you taste a beer and you say, well, yeah, that needs to be a little bit different. The best example would be the ESB. We had a little bit too much hops in that beer, and we actually reduced the hops slightly because we felt like, although it tasted good, it really wasn't true to style. So we've changed that recipe recently and decreased the hops slightly.
Yeah, James and Joe and you are always that's what I love about the recipes on the 2 websites, because they're always evolving and y'all are never satisfied. See, I need to flip that switch in my head of contentness, because I'm like, tastes good enough. All right, that's going to be my future. When y'all are like, no, it could be better. It could be better. More power to you. I'm glad y'all are in my life. But yes, that is wrapping up the first segment, because I do have a question, which it stems from more or less what we've been talking about all day. It came from Monty, who used a submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Monty wrote in, hello, Homebrew Happy Hour. On a recent episode, you talked about brewing a clone, and he has this in quotation marks, recipe for a local IPA. I am very new to making my own beer, but I am also very interested in making beers that are similar to my favorite craft beers. How does a homebrewer go about making their own clone recipe? This might sound like a stupid question, but is my best bet going to be reaching out to the brewery for help if I can't find a recipe online? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on how the best and most accurate clone recipes available online are created. If the brewery isn't involved or selling the clone recipe, how on earth can a homebrewer nail the recipe, or is the truth that there are not a lot of accurate clone recipes available? Sorry for my long question, but if you include it on an episode, that would be great. Thanks for the show. And he just submitted this. Usually sometimes I go way back because we have a ton of questions in the bank. He just submitted this on, it was Sunday. And then when we were going Monday, I was like, oh, Todd mentioned, let's do this week's episode talking about the tasting. I said, in my head, I'm thinking that's perfect because I have the perfect question. Joe, I want to throw this to you first. You have, you as running homebrewsupply.com, clone recipes are no stranger on that website. There are a ton. You are also no stranger to brewing them, correct?
Yeah, totally. And kind of designing them. Yeah. So, I mean, first off, you would be surprised at how many breweries, don't mind at all or are totally open with letting you know what they use. It's usually an issue, or not an issue, but it's a kind of an ordeal to scale it down to a 5 or 10 gallon batch, because they're virtually none of them are going to give you a 5 gallon recipe. But they'll, you can get some info, like they use just standard 2-row, they use pale ale malt. And then you can kind of get percentages of how much crystal malt they may use. And those are all kind of good ways to get your grain bill kind of just going. And then a lot of times they'll give you at least an idea of what strains of hops they use. So they may use Azacca, Mosaic, and Chinook. And then you kind of have to piece it together from there. So it does take some tinkering. And then, online, you can search for a clone of virtually, I want to say, any beer, and you'll probably find a hit or two at least. a good place to start if you don't want to just Google search it is Brewer's Friend. There's a ton of clones that people have put together on there. And what you can do is kind of compare and contrast a few of those with each other, the same clone that you're looking to make, and really kind of get an idea of, here's the grain bill that you're generally going to be looking at. There may be some minute differences, and the same goes with the hop bill. And so you can kind of either piece together your own recipe from the combination of those two, or, kind of pick one and go with it and see how it turns out, tinker with it from there, and kind of really lock it in and kind of fine tune it.
Todd, as long as I believe we did a Shinerbot clone in your kitchen in San Marcos once, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
Was that now I forget, because I know that you're as much as we all play our own shticks, you're not a dumb brewer. You know your thing. Was that one a kit you bought, or was that one that you made up? Because I don't remember.
Yeah, that was a kit we bought. We actually bought that. That was before we were doing brewing ingredients at all. And we bought it from Homebrew Supply not Homebrew Supply, Austin Homebrew, back when they were owned by Forrest, and it was a small little Austin company, and of course, being in Austin, they had to have a Shiner clone, right? So, and it was good. I don't think it was like most clones. I think it is very hard to hit it exactly, but sometimes you can get I've noticed with Shiner, particularly Shiner Bock, I have had many different Shiner Bocks that tasted differently from bottle to bottle. I've had some that were super carbonated, some that were barely carbonated. You get variations even within the commercial beers like that. Maybe not as much anymore with something like Shiner, but back in the day, you got a lot of variation when you were drinking Shiner Bock 20 years ago compared to probably what you get now.
Which is a great time for me to remind everyone, we are living in the best freaking time ever. like this is the greatest time ever. Imagine being Charlie, and you're writing out your complete joy of homebrewing book, and you're having to, he had to scientifically, mathematically formulate, like, this is close to this style, and here's how I got it. Me, Google, I want or homebrewsupply.com. I'd like to try a Founder's Breakfast Stout clone. Hey, there it is. Perfect. I'm going to brew it. Boom. Like Joe was saying, here's my opinion. Here's my perspective. Write in, like a lot of people will, to tell me I'm wrong. If you cannot find the clone that you want online, it's more than likely because the brewery that you're wanting to mimic is so craft, so micro, so nano, that even then they're going to be on that level that they're going to probably help you out too if you reached out to them. Like I'm thinking of specifically, like in my area in Buda, Two Wheel, right? Well, Joe happens to know the head brewer there. Y'all have worked together in former lives.
He's not the head brewer.
A brewer.
I know, the assistant brewer fairly well, and I have met the I think it's like co-owners. I think it's two guys who co-own it. I have met them, but I don't know them on a personal level.
But they
just to clear,
whatever style, whatever beer they have, and I was like, I go to that cigar shop right down the street from them, who serves a few of their beers any given week or any given month of the year, and I really want to brew this. Oh, I can't find it online because it's this nano brewery, or I don't know by the BA standards where they actually fall, but they're definitely not brewing many barrels a year, or not nearly as many as like some of the
in comparison.
Totally. But they're so small that I guarantee you they'd welcome me to go, hey, yeah, this is what we use. And maybe they wouldn't tell me the secret for the yeast or whatever, but you can get close in that way. James,
what are you going to do? Like, you got a couple million laying around to start up a brewery and steal their, it's like, it's very unlikely that that's going to ever happen.
Totally. Exactly. And that's why I think, and most people who brew are super cool. James, even, I always like to poke fun at Germans because they just always sound so angry, and I'm trying to learn their language and I'm terrible at it. But James reached out to Todd. You'd have to correct me. Was it the head brewer at Schlussel, or who was it from Schlussel that he reached out to? And he gave him everything but the yeast. He gave him, this is the malts we use. This is the hops we use. He gave him everything but the yeast. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah, I think that is a thing. Is the grain bill and the hops are not going to be as huge of a secret as the yeast. You'll find that when a lot of it has to do with a lot of the yeast is a house culture, so it's not like you're going to be able to go and find it anywhere. So that yeah, if you do run into an issue with the brewery trying to be as secretive as they can, it's probably going to be about what yeast they're using. What they may have a house blend where they take, they may order from White Yeast or White Labs if they don't have their own laboratory, and then they blend, a handful together or a couple together, and that's the strain they use.
Absolutely. And I want to, I'll wrap up this segment with this question to both of you. Todd, you first. Now that you are brewing a lot more, you have the R&D. When you are brewing whatever style you're trying to brew, are you trying to brew it inherently based off of your favorite commercial beer, so thus kind of making a clone, or are you trying to just brew this style and you already know the notes that you're trying to get from the end result?
Yeah, I'm trying to brew the style and hit those notes. I'm rarely trying to, I don't know that I've ever really tried to brew specifically to a beer, except for one that you mentioned earlier, which is that milk stout. I did try to hit that one as close as possible. So,
and Joe, what about you? Because you are making recipes all the time. You've made some for me. When you make them yourself, is there that commercial beer in mind, in the back of your mind, or are you just like, okay, I know he's gonna want floral, for that IPA you made us?
More of the latter. More of the latter than I don't start with like a sculpin and say like, unless I'm going for a specific sculpin, but if I'm like creating, you and your pops a recipe to brew, it's not going to typically ever be like that. Like we talked about, I think that customer or the listener mentioned that we were mentioning, brewing a jellyfish clone. That's going in that particular route on purpose to make a clone of jellyfish, not to just brew a beer. So I think its circumstances kind of lend to that. What I do want to mention one other thing. When I do a clone and it is not and I do it side by side for the beer I cloned and try and taste them, it's not all that common that it's going to taste the exact same. And honestly, if you're, especially with IPAs and some of the ones that you want to drink fresher, you may actually like the beer you brewed more because it's not been on the shelf for weeks and, the whole thing. So, I don't even know if the intent is necessarily to mimic the beer exactly with a clone. I think the idea is to, brew a beer that you enjoy that resembles one that you have kind of, especially like a Sierra Nevada Pale Ale clone. It's like that beer was the one that converted me into drinking pretty much only craft beer. And it's like, I want to kind of pay homage to making something like that to, and then, turn around and make it your house pale if you open up a brewery kind of thing,
Yeah, I like you wrapping up with that. Look at optimism, positivity, Joe. I like that. Brew because you love it. I'm going to put a picture of you in black and white with the words you just said overimposed. I do like, joking aside, I do like that. And I like the concept, like you said, brewing is it is one of, I find myself in very addictive hobbies, like jujitsu, I guess fatherhood's more than a hobby, but like brewing, I like these things that kind of get me super involved in the process, and brewing is one of those ones where I like the idea, like you said. I've brewed just recipes that are made for us, some of them that are available on the websites that are specifically clone kits, and the whole experience and journey is cool because it shapes your next brew day to where you're like, oh, what I liked about that commercial beer was da. And what I liked from that one we brewed that's the same style but wasn't a direct clone was da. And then you do your homework and you go, how can I get the best of both? And you brew a batch and so on and so forth, et cetera, et cetera. And before you know it, you're an old man and you have your favorite beer. I was trying to be deep too. I'm sorry.
No, that's good. I like it.
But Monty, thank you so much. And again, a good time to remind people, when you submit your question at homebrewhappyhour.com or people have sent it through our Facebook page at facebook.com/homebrewhappyhour, as well as the telephone number at 325-305-6107. We give you a $25 gift card to the show's sponsor for that episode, which today is Kegconnection.com. Todd, thanks for letting me spend your money.
Absolutely.
Okay, guys, man, I am happy that we have had you back, Todd, and have had you, Joe, on so much. But I'm sorry for taking up almost an hour of your day doing the show. But I appreciate you guys joining me, and I look forward to our Homebrew Con planning and seeing you guys soon.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Take care.
Absolutely. And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, visit homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or now, like I just mentioned, you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor for today's episode, Kegconnection.com, for supporting our podcast and the homebrewing community. Go to Kegconnection.com right now, use the promo code HHH, and you're going to receive 5% off your order. On behalf of Todd Burns, Ladik Joe Ermis, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.